government of Nigeria has commenced the implementation of visa on arrival for Africans.
The Nigerian Immigration Service has also deployed a new border management security system in 4 airports across the country. While in Cairo, the Egyptian capital, President Buhari in 2019 announced the visa on arrival policy for Africans. He said the strategic decision will bring down barriers that have hindered the free movement of Africans within the continent.
Well, the Senate had kicked against the decision and summoned the Minister of Interior to brief them on the policy. Lawmakers say the executive did not carry the legislature along before coming up with this policy. Well, joining us now is Sesugh Akume, National Spokesperson for Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, ANRP, to discuss federal government's visa on arrival policy for Africans. Thank you so much, Mr. Akume, for coming on the show this morning. Let me begin by asking you if you have any reservations about this policy. And what are those reservations? Is it the fact that it is limited to only Africans? Is it the timing? Is it the ability or capability of the immigration that we have? What would your reservations be?
Thank you for having me. I have reservations with the policy all through, all sides of it. It's not a well thought out policy. We Nigerians weren't, it wasn't explained to us because it raises so many questions, just like the questions you've raised there. There's so many questions the policy has raised. The other thing I don't like about it personally is the contempt with which Nigerian rulers treat Nigerians. How is it that there was going to be a policy that affects all Nigerians, and yet we got to hear it in the media in a distant country? And then you're going to be asking, part of the borders are closed, goods are not coming in and not going out, but human beings are allowed to come in. There's so many things. What do we stand to gain? Nobody's answering those questions. And so the whole thing, assuming that it were even a good decision, a good policy, the process of it is flawed altogether, and it causes a problem. The other side about it, which makes me even more worried and more bothered, is that we're in trouble, so to speak, and that's just the fact. The fact that the Nigerian legislature, the Nigerian Senate said, no, this is not a proper policy. Even if it were, we should be carried along. We should play our oversight function of scrutinizing it, of looking into it, of analyzing it, and knowing whether it works. And if it should work, then how we can strengthen it and what we can do about it. The regime says it's unimportant, and then they go ahead and do that. I think it shows a very, very terrible precedent, and it's heading us in the wrong direction. If we cannot even respect the separation of powers and know that there is a legislature, there is a judiciary, and then there's the executive that implements policies, and we cannot even follow that, then what are we doing? How are we running a country? And if we're not running a country properly, how then are we talking about visa on arrival first? First things first. We need to put our house in order, and those would be my opening thoughts.
When you're saying we need to put our house in order, are you saying invariably that the president didn't think through this before he went to Cairo in Egypt to make that decision and make that stance? And secondly, before we go on a quick commercial break, is it not going to support and boost the AFCTA goal in the end? We'll come back after this quick commercial break. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News. And we've got Mr. Akume with us here, spokesperson for Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party. We're talking about the border closure. I did ask before, I said, are you saying that invariably the president didn't think through this before he made this decision? Doesn't he have the right to do this? And this decision is not geared at supporting, the drive by AFCTA, open borders. A couple of other countries do this, and there's no hassle to it. There's no big deal about it. I got into Rwanda, the same process. Got into Kenya, the same process. So why is there a big deal about it coming from Nigeria?
Do not understand it, and then it was announced to us from a foreign country. It is contempt. When you want to initiate a policy that's going to affect citizens of Nigeria, you sit down with them and explain things. What is this all about? How is this going to affect you? How is this going to affect our country? None of those was done. I'm even saying that the legislature, which is statutorily supposed to oversee the process, doesn't know what it is. So if I want to ask questions, who am I going to be asking? And then, like I said, even symbolically, it was wrongly done because we heard about it for the first time from Cairo in Egypt. Totally wrong. There can't be anything right about that. The other side about it is this. This regime doesn't even understand how it goes about its own decisions. In the first place, Nigeria agreed to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, if you remember. When the agreement was ready and it was time for Nigeria to sign, Buhari refused to sign it. When he went to London during that business roundtable, that was where he was asked that Nigeria is not part of the AfCFTA. Why is Nigeria not out of it? Why is that? That was when he went completely off tangent. You remember when he said Nigerian youth are lazy and all of that? I'm sure because he heard the word free in the African Free Continental Trade Agreement. Maybe that's why he went off tangent. He didn't explain to us why Nigeria wasn't participating in the agreement, because we're going to lose out. The next time he went to Niger to sign, nobody explained to us why we're going to sign now. We weren't part of it, now we're going to be part of it. Why? Now, let me make the point. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Let me make the point. Let me just land on this. On this one, too, is the same thing I'm saying. I'm saying that what we are saying is that even on this one, we do not even understand what we stand to gain. We don't just do business or open our borders or do visa on arrival or all of that because other people are doing it or because it is just done. Why are we doing it? Why at this time? Those questions are not answered. I'm saying that whether it is a good idea or it is a bad idea, of which we're of the opposition, of the opinion that it's not a good idea and not properly done, and at this time, even if it is so done, the process is flawed, and so it invalidates the whole thing. The other problem is that the legislature isn't carried along, which portends even greater damage to us. Because right now, it appears that we do not have a legislature, and we're running a one system of government that doesn't have a legislature. I'm sorry, that's how military governments run, not a democracy. That's even a bigger problem.
Okay, so on the flip side, now let's look at it. You have mentioned all the cons that come with this policy. However, if you look at it, it's been a practice in other developing countries, and it's also been approved by the International Organization for Standardization, because they are going to be using the MIDAS, which processes and takes biometrics of these individuals coming in. It begins to start a national security base where they can use to monitor who goes in and out of Nigeria. Now, I understand that the process in which they got there might not have been straight, but if you look at the pros of this policy, don't you think it's something that we need in Nigeria to also boost our economy as well?
When you look at a policy, it has good sides, it has bad sides. It has upsides, it has downsides. So maybe every bad policy could have a good side. The thing is, you weigh it. And then you also weigh whether it's going to be sustainable. And like I said, if you are running a sort of a military government, because like I said, in a democracy, you always have to have a legislature. That's what differentiates a legislature between a democracy and every other government, because you have a legislature. When you repudiate what they say, when you don't mind, when you don't go about it, even portends more danger, because when we see the loopholes in it and how we can make it better, and you refuse to listen, how then do we go about it? How do we say, let's just implement something because somebody said it's a good idea and other people are doing it? Other people didn't just wake up one day and implement it because other international bodies and other countries are doing it. They went through a process. They looked at every side of it. They looked at alternatives. Not everybody's just opening their borders. Let's even come back home. What's the value of our own passport? What are we even gaining from this? Yeah, we're opening. Are others also opening their own borders for us to go there and get visa on arrival? Our passport isn't even valuable. Our passport is number 97 out of 109. That's like the 12th least valuable passport. What are we doing to uplift it, to increase its quality, enhance our dignity? So are we going to be opening our borders for everybody to just come in? And what are we going in the process? The other side of what we're saying is that we need to dialogue. We need to dialogue and to get the best out of it. As long as we're not dialoguing and opening the process in order to remove the loopholes and then close it up and get the best deal for Nigeria, it cannot be a good idea. That's the bottom line of what we're saying. My question to you
would be, when will be the right time for Nigeria? You've talked about it being a policy and not having the backing of the legislature, but there has been argument that because this is an executive policy, it doesn't need the inputs of the legislature. It's not a treaty. But my question to you about the right timing for Nigeria, because the 2019 Africa Visa Openness Index by the African Development Bank and the African Union Commission does show that more African countries are becoming liberal with their visa policies. In fact, presently you have 27 African countries that have free visa or visa on arrival. It also shows that most of those countries are topping the ranks for those with increased foreign direct investment, increased economy because of their tourism and others. And you have countries such as Benin, Senegal, Ghana, just to name a few. So when will it be the right time for Nigeria? And could this be avoidable? Because as my colleague has said, Nigeria is a signatory to the AFCFTA. Nigeria is a leading member of ECOWAS. So it's not really avoidable, is it? And when would have been the right time for us, really?
No, about the timing, it was supposed to be implemented in 2019. So where it's already if it's happening in 2020, maybe I can say that we could have done it earlier. We're talking about the process and what is sustainable. We're also talking. That's part of what we're talking about. I also talked about what we're standing to gain and what we need to do internally to fix our house in order before we jump into the ocean. We can't do things without understanding them. That's part of what we're saying. It's not as if we couldn't have, or we shouldn't, not at all. We're talking about how can we, because everybody, they didn't just sign it and close their eyes. Everybody looked at what benefits them, how they need to put their houses in order, and how they can make the most of it. We didn't do that homework. The other side about talking about free entry and free exit is that, for instance, we closed our borders in the southern part of the country. For the record, it's not all the borders that are closed. That's not part of what the AFCTA is talking about. And then, so we're cherry picking. We pick some parts and don't do other parts and do. So there's inconsistency in the whole thing. When there's inconsistency, your guess is as good as mine where the whole thing is going to end. What does it take for us to do the proper thing and do it properly and then put everybody on board and do the right thing once? Because the other people that did it don't think that because there's an agreement, everybody just woke up one day and signed it. It wasn't done that way. We can't be doing things that way.
Okay, Mr. Akume, real quickly. I just wanted to, look at some of the things you said. You said the government did not negotiate and just came out of the blues and joined AFCTA. That was not true. There were negotiations with MAN, and that continued for quite a while. It was a thought-through decision before the government finally joined the AFCTA. Just to clear that real quickly. And this is what I said rightly. This is where Africa is going. It's even long overdue for. What are your concerns with this? Is it because they didn't tell the people? What are your concerns with this? I'll have thought you will have talked about geopolitics and security and the likes of things like that. I'm not hearing that narrative. What are your concerns with this, real quickly, as a wrap-up?
No, let me put the record straight. When I said that there was no negotiations, I'm talking about in-house. Because part of the core thing I'm talking about, what we're talking about is that we cannot plunge ourselves into something that we do not understand internally first. So when I'm saying that there was no negotiation in-house, you reported it already. The National Assembly says they weren't carried along. Maybe they're carrying along means giving them money. Maybe that's what it means. But what I'm saying is that it's not as if the Nigerian people understand the thing and how it's going to affect us and all of those. So that's part of what we said earlier, that it has to be first things first. When we put the thing together and then we know how it's going to affect us, then we can actually look at what are the pros, what are the cons, how does this affect us positively, how does it affect us negatively. But when from the right onset we get the things wrong, then we're putting the cart in front of the horse. So when we can talk about open borders and all of those, that's part of the thing. Let me even make a point. Let me make a quick point. As of 2012, the Nigerian Immigration Service told us that we had 1,497 open borders.
Okay, Mr. Akume, that's about all we
Part
can
of the
take.
thing I'm talking about in-house. Part of the thing I'm talking about in-house is...
We'd like to thank you for your time. That's about all we can take. We'd like to thank you for your time. We'll see you burning with passion as regards this. Thanks so much, Sesugh Akume, for talking to us from the Abundant Renewal Party as spokesperson. That's our show for you today. My name is Rufai Hussaini.
I am Adesuwa Moran.
And I am Sheito Atigari. Thank you for watching. You can also follow us on social media handles showing now on the screen.